what is trauma-informed care? We'll talk about what trauma-informed care is, and then we'll talk about what trauma is. Trauma-informed care, in my view, and this is going to be a little more touchy-feely, then we'll get more into the nuts and bolts. So it's welcoming every part. We all show up with so much happening under the surface, and some of us more than others. A lot of times things kind of symptoms and behaviors and ways of being can come out seeming quite interesting. And so trauma-informed care is welcoming every part and knowing that it makes sense, that however someone's acting, whatever they're saying, whatever they need, want, whatever they're doing, that there's something about it that makes sense, even if it feels disruptive or confusing. It might be that they are acting out of some kind of coping experience or stress response, which we'll talk about later. And so when we take our hearts and view others as what makes sense about this, is there anything that might be happening for them that might be stressing them, and then this is emerging? Or what makes sense about this huge expansive experience? What makes sense about them being X, Y, and Z? It could be something that feels pleasant, unpleasant, or anywhere in between. But with trauma-informed care, we know that whatever is happening, there's something about it that makes sense. Where this comes from is that so many people, especially with trauma, get treated like they're wrong, they're bad, they don't make sense. And when we can start going, something has to make sense about this, they will feel that we're not judging them, we're not scared of them, we're not alarmed by them, that we actually are sitting here with compassion and kindness, trying to figure out what makes sense, even if it's hard to do, because it can be sometimes. There's a difference between being concerned and alarmed. So when we can stay steady in ourselves, we can stay grounded, resourced ourselves, mindful in our own bodies, hearts, and minds, we can respond with a sense of care and concern of, oh my goodness, I feel that happened to you. That's big. I feel that, instead of, oh my gosh, I have to fix that. That's scary. That's bad. There's a big difference because, again, folks with trauma are used to people tiptoeing around them and being scared of them and their history. So when we can really care deeply instead of go to that place of alarm, we can tend to what arises together. We can slow down, we can have compassion, we can care about it together. So that gives us permission to not have to tiptoe, figure out, fix, or give advice. Trauma-informed care to me is about being with people instead of doing to. And you all named this. It's being with people in as compassionate a way as possible, kind, curious, gentle, and that's all going to come from our own sense of being able to stay steady and regulated in ourselves and resourced in your community with each other as well. So I don't need to redefine and recreate the wheel. SAMHSA is a mental health association that just breaks down what trauma-informed care means in a really basic way. And so it's 4 principles. The first is we are aware that trauma exists and it affects people in groups in harmful and negative ways. We're just aware. We're aware that it exists. That's a thing that's going to be walking through the door because everybody has been impacted by trauma at this point. So number 2, we're aiming to recognize the signs and symptoms of trauma, and we're aware when people might be activated or when they are activated. So we'll look at that today, what that might look like. Number 3, we have a system in which can respond to trauma. And so taking care, just like you are right now, you're building a system, a community, a network, a circle of support that can respond as it arises in each moment together. And the 4th is that we resist re-traumatization. So with these tools, we can do a much better job of not adding stress on top of stress, right? Because when trauma impacts us, it creates stress in a system, in a mind, a heart, and a body. And then when we're trauma informed, we set it up so that we're creating safety, we're creating a trustworthy relationship, we're creating a trustworthy space where people feel like, oh, even if this big, heavy, overwhelming material arises, I'm held here. And that makes all the difference. I'm welcome here. Every part of me is welcome. I know where to go if I need to lean in, that kind of thing.